Well, that was Joe Biden urging Hamas to come to the table. Let's talk more about the ceasefire deal at large. And for that, I'm joined by Rob Parsons, our chief foreign editor, coming to us from Jerusalem. Rob, it's a comprehensive ceasefire deal, at least in Joe Biden's own words. What exactly does it involve? And do you see the two warring parties coming to the table as a result of this new deal?
Well, let's see. I mean, it is an extraordinary and dramatic development being announced, and this in itself is interesting, in the White House rather than here in Jerusalem. And it comes in three parts, providing ultimately for complete cessation of hostilities, which is what Hamas has been saying is the bottom line for it, to be able to release all the hostages that it is holding at the moment in the Gaza Strip. But to go through the phases, the first phase would last about 6 weeks, according to the deal outlined by Joe Biden. It would involve the release of an agreed number of hostages, an agreed number of Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails. It would allow for the return of all people inside the Gaza Strip to the areas where they live, where they came from. Many of them find their homes are destroyed, of course. It will provide also for the supply of the population of Gaza with at least 600 trucks of aid per day. And crucially, it will provide for the withdrawal of all Israeli troops from populated areas of the Gaza Strip. That's phase one. Now, if that works well, they move into phase two, and Israel will withdraw all its forces totally from the Gaza Strip. All hostages will be released in return for a total number of Palestinian prisoners to be agreed. And an end will be made to the hostilities. You know, it is an extraordinary development. If they get to that stage, in phase three, the US has guaranteed to help Israel and the Palestinians in Gaza with the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. You know, there are lots of questions to be asked about how the various phases will work together, whether it's even feasible. How will Hamas respond to it? All kinds of questions. But it's an extraordinary development and has taken things much further than anybody could have anticipated at this stage.
And you say it's being led by the White House, which is in itself unprecedented, it would almost seem, to the fact that we haven't heard Israel comments on it. We haven't heard representatives of Hamas, at least being open to it just yet. Who is at more pressure as it stands? Because Joe Biden says Israel could be isolating itself on the international stage, and he's saying that Hamas needs to come to the table. So in whose interest is it to get this done as soon as possible?
I think everybody's under a lot of pressure here. You know, the Israeli government clearly, Hamas also, but Joe Biden himself, you know, he's gone out on a limb with this. You know, it has to be said, it's being presented as an Israeli proposal, not as an American proposal. It's just being announced by Joe Biden. So the question, I suppose the first question you have to ask is who in the Israeli government is behind this? It's hard to imagine that Joe Biden would have made a statement like this unless he felt he had the support of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister. But as he made clear in the statement he made, he understands very well there are some in the Israeli cabinet who are totally opposed to the idea of a ceasefire now with Hamas. They want to go to the end. They want to completely destroy Hamas, and they talk about reoccupying Gaza and running it from Israel. He was saying to Benjamin Netanyahu, presumably is the man he had in mind, look, you have to take a step here back from where you've been going, where the confrontation we've seen over the last 8 months. You have to step back from that and support this deal. You have to ignore the pressure that's coming from the hardliners in your own government. For Hamas, on the other hand, too, you know, they've been saying all along, pretty secure, I suspect, in the suspicion at least, that Israel was never going to agree to something like this. You know, that Israel was determined to press ahead until it achieved its goals in the Gaza Strip. And suddenly here's a proposal coming from the Israeli government via Joe Biden, which appears to satisfy their demand for a total ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. The question, though, that I think will be uppermost in the minds of Hamas leaders as they look at this proposal is, where does this leave Hamas? Where does Hamas fit into this sort of deal? What is in it for Hamas?
Well, it will be interesting to see what remarks do come from the militant group in the next couple of hours and days, of course, following those Joe Biden comments. Rob, thanks as always. Rob Parsons, our chief foreign editor, coming to us from Jerusalem following that statement by Joe Biden, a new ceasefire proposal from Israel.